Hi, my name's Zach. For those of you who don't know me, I lead the mission stream here at KXC. Today, we have the privilege of having a guest speaker. So we've got Pete Portal here, all the way from South Africa. Although grew up in London, so you actually are a Londoner, so you're back home. As a church, we have an amazing privilege to partner with Pete, and him and a team lead an amazing church community down in Cape Town. We've partnered with them for a number of years. We get to pray for them, support them, learn from them. And Pete, over the last I guess about 6 or so years, has frequently visited KXC. And every time, this has been an absolute gift to hear from his teaching. He's a man of great integrity, wisdom. He's also a very brave man being in this neck of the woods in London because he is a Tottenham fan. So maybe at the end of the service say something. Great, but before he's going to come up and preach, we'll have a little break. But before that, we're going to watch a video so that you guys can see a little bit more about Tree of Life.
What people say in the community, there will never be peace and harmony. But I think if everyone would receive what we received, I think a lot would change, everything would change, people would change, the community would be different, and I think there will be peace and harmony.
With the forceful removals, everyone was just dumped here on this piece of land and they were to sort themselves out. Obviously families were broken up and people were feeling unsafe.
The idea of Menenberg, it was created to hold or gather the unwanted.
And that's how the gangsters started out. It started out like just we protecting our space and ourselves because we're feeling vulnerable. And then it started to evolve into this thing where it's now our turf and our this and the fighting in between. Things were taken from you violently and you were put here with nothing. And then the drugs came in and it's like, yes, let's just medicate this pain.
Like growing up in Menenberg is challenging, like the choices you have to make every day. Like being exposed from a young age to gangsterism, people stabbing each other, people running with guns in your road.
I didn't have a parent that was there for me like I needed him to be. I went to go look for that parents' love elsewhere. Yeah, and that made me end up in addiction.
Crystal meth. I smoked when I was 12 years old. I wanted to be loved. I wanted to find out to get love, so I look for love in the wrong places.
There's a lot of things that I needed freedom from and healing from.
That day I saw my father's tears for the first time in my whole life. First time I saw him cry for me because he wanted me to make a change.
Do we need to take you out, or can this really happen inside of this place? Inside the hurt, inside the pain, inside of all the stuff, can beautiful stuff happen? Can beautiful stuff spring up? We want to see a community change, but not change just to get by. Change that is rooted, it's rooted in love.
I felt a love I never experienced in my life, the way those people took me in. They didn't see the hate, the evil, they see good in me and I couldn't see that.
A family that loves one another and supports one another in just any situation.
Seeing what community actually looks like, they actually family to me.
Living in community with people and with the girls, and they've chosen to come here because they want to try and change their life and they want to heal and they go to the hard places. I think living here with them, I can't not do the same. That I also have to lead by example and also go to the hard places for me.
The whole community, they have really boosted up my confidence. I have confidence now that I've never had.
I think I would have still been out there or dead by now if Tree of Life wouldn't have been here and have their doors open for me to come and stay and receive the love that they had for me.
We just want to see people grow from where they've been into something different. Jesus would be there. Jesus would definitely be there when it's hurting and there's no money or there's violence against women and children, or just young men being taken of the innocence. There's the places Jesus wants to be at. This is a beautiful place.
Just see God so much in that his desire for the world was that it was everyone together, moving together.
Amazing. So we're going to hear from Pete shortly, but if anyone in the room wants to find out a little bit more about Tree of Life, obviously Pete's here this afternoon, but you can also grab Shelby, who actually is in the room. So Shelby leads our global mission stuff here at KXC, so you can also email Shelby or come grab her on a Sunday if you want to find out more.
Great, isn't this fun? Feels a little, with Pete and everyone else being away, it feels a bit like the parents have left. Parents have gone, they've left us the keys. We could do whatever we want. So why not just read the word and pray together, hey? My name's Pete. It's just a joy to be here with you. I'm like that, I suppose I'm like that kind of weird uncle who you see every couple of years, who comes and sort of pats you on the head patronizingly and tells you how much you've grown. But I mean, you have, legitimately, it's happening. Fourth service, fifth service, I can't keep up. That's about as much as I can count to. I'm going to have to, I don't know. But we in Tree of Life have been following your guys' progress from afar. Interestingly, I moved to Manenberg in 2009, which I think is roughly when Pete and B started. Maybe they're a year ahead, but they're a bit older. So yeah, it's been kind of, there's been a parallel type of progress, I suppose. And a couple of years ago, we had young Zach out with us to Manenberg with Pete and Benj. He came, didn't he? And you were welcomed by, was it a knife fight or something was going on, wasn't it? Yeah. And then Zach joined the running club in Manenberg, so 1 week only. It was a huge hit. So I mean, see Tim Parker over there, shining for all to see. And we've had Adam Hughes, some of you might know in the video. Top off, as usual, loves that. So, you know, anyone who wants to come join us, feel free. Feel free. And for those who don't know me, I'm from London. Sure, I'm a Spurs fan, whatever. But grew up in Forest Hill, southeast London, and then moved to Manenberg 18 years ago when I was 23. So I'm kind of coming up to that almost lived half my life in Manenberg hurdle. Still sound very English, apparently. But yeah, I'm part of leading Tree of Life. Tree of Life's a 24/7 prayer community. You guys sort of cross over with 24/7 prayer a bit through wildfires and that sort of thing, right? And yeah, Sarah, my wife, and I, Sarah and the kids, by the way, would have loved to be here, but we have been speaking at a kind of week last week, so the kids are fully talked out. They both rejected the kids' groups, so sat listening to their parents drone on all week with lots of people they didn't know. So they didn't come today to avoid a kind of nuclear meltdown. I hope that's okay. Yeah, Sarah and I, we bought a house in Manenberg about 15 years ago. We moved in on our second wedding anniversary, in fact, to Manenberg. First wedding anniversary, went to Marrakesh. That was lovely. Second wedding anniversary, we moved to Manenberg. Might seem a little like we peaked early, but bear in mind, we went to McDonald's for lunch that day, ever the romantic, and there was a administrative error, and so we got 6 free chicken nuggets. So, #blessed, favor ain't fair, all that sort of thing. And people often ask us, well, why do you live in Manenberg? Because Manenberg was built by the racist apartheid regime in the 60s for people whose only crime was that they weren't white. It was a ghetto constructed on the myth of white supremacy for those whose homes were bulldozed in the city center and literally got home from work some days in the 60s, were told, there's your family, there's all your stuff in the back of that truck, jump on, you're going to your new home. And today, really quite inevitably, drugs, gangs, and poverty prevail. I mean, who knows that if your home was bulldozed and you were so violated by the state all those years ago, the collective trauma response is, of course, to defend your turf with everything you've got. It's really quite predictable. And while some people say, well, but gangs and drugs are the problem in Cape Town, it's a world-class city. It kind of tops all the charts at the moment for best places to go. And I've seen this thing trending on Instagram that's, what is it, London poor, third world rich, which is a kind of like slightly awkward thing where British people come as digital nomads for 3 months and Airbnb like a penthouse in Cape Town for the same price as a shoebox in Peckham or something. And so Cape Town is a victim of its own beauty, but it's separated by kind of glitter around the Atlantic seaboard and ghetto far towards the east. And that's where we've chosen to live. People say, well, nothing good can come out of Manenberg. And we say that's exactly what people said about Nazareth 2,026 odd years ago. And so we don't quite believe, I don't think, that Jesus will come again in Manenberg. But we definitely feel like if he lived in Cape Town, he'd probably live down the road from us. And so theologically, we wanted to see if the good news really works. Is anyone else kind of wondering, does the good news really work? Should I come to church every week? I'm part of a hub. Join a hub. Hub leaders, everyone, they need hub leaders. I'm part of a hub, but does the gospel actually work? I really genuinely believe Jesus is Lord and he died for my sins, but does it work in hopeless places? And so theologically, we wanted to see whether the gospel could bring freedom and healing in places of chronic violence, marginalization, and despair. So theologically, we thought this works for us. And politically, we wanted to cross racial and socioeconomic lines and learn primarily from those who aren't voiceless by any means, but who Arundhati Roy calls the deliberately silenced and preferably unheard. Systems continue to exacerbate such mutedness on the margins. And so for those of us born in centers of society and with power and with passports and with education, there's such an onus, I believe, in the gospel for us to empty ourselves of presuppositions and privilege and listen to those on the edges of society, because here's the thing, the poor are always prophetic. They just speak quietly. And so the first thing we have to do is shut the hell up and listen. And so I'm still learning to do that 18 years later. I was a little embarrassed to see that I was wearing the same shorts in that video that we made 3 years ago as I'm wearing today, by the way. That's just a, stream of consciousness. Today we're looking at blessed are the peacemakers. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. And first of all, we need to explain two big words in that small verse. Blessed and peace. Firstly, blessed. Blessed, as I'm sure you will know, all you Greek scholars, comes from the Greek makarios, right? Makarios. And there's no adequate English word that can really express what makarios means. There's a strong argument for it to be translated as flourishing. Flourishing are the peacemakers. I quite like that. Different sort of Bibles say sort of lucky or happy. I don't think that's as good, but flourishing is pretty good. And makarios really, okay, this is what it is. Makarios is the opposite of trying to do good things to earn favor with God, okay? If you're here at church today because you think, oh, if I turn up to church, then God will like tick a box and he'll give me good things, okay? Like massive reductionist sweeping statement here, but that's more the theology of Islam than it is of Christianity. Christianity is that you cannot work your way up to a state of perfection or acceptance from God. It's simply that we recognize that we are destitute without him. And so we wait for him in Jesus to come down to earth, rescue us from our destitution and inability. And then we receive this sense of flourishing. We can say that we have discovered a way of being in the world that naturally leads to flourishing in me. And because I'm flourishing, it spills out all around me. That is makarios. There are alternative translations of makarios. They could be living your best life. Forgive me for saying this. Slay queen. Just trying to be relevant here. I know that's a pity laugh. That's fine. That's fine. That's fine. Jesus offers in all of this an entirely different perspective to that celebrity writing about hashtag blessed because I've got 100,000 followers, or that young zealous Christian thinking that if I just pray enough and behave enough, then I'll be blessed, right? And it's that kind of like, I don't know about you, but forgive me, but youth group at church for me was basically don't gossip or masturbate and one day you'll be a home group leader. That was basically the trajectory of the Christian faith. And I was like, oh, I could be a home group leader one day, you know. And so then the kingdom, living as a Christian in the kingdom, I got told off once for that, but I'm just pressing in today. And not here, there's somewhere else. And the pastor said, how am I going to explain that word to my kids? I was like, you don't need to, it's fine. Gossip's very easy to explain. Anyway, but we kind of sell the world a kind of vanilla version of worldly living, where hopefully we just swear and sleep around less and expect people to think, oh, what a compelling vision for life. No. Makarios, blessed, flourishing, is this thing that we have. Stanley Hauerwas puts it well, right? He says, we live as those who know something about the fate of the world that the world does not yet know. And that makes us different. We're in on this kingdom secret, but it's an open secret that wants out. And that is the difference. And so this blessed that Jesus is talking about, by no means is it some kind of guarantee that you'll get all the money you need and you'll have all the friends you need and you'll get married to the person you think you deserve and you'll get job promotions all the way till you die. No, it actually will guarantee that at some point you'll experience suffering. There's no one here in this room who hasn't experienced suffering. The question is, do you want to experience it with Jesus or without Jesus? That's genuinely the only real two options you've got. And so therefore, this state of blessing, of makarios, can actually include and needs to integrate suffering into the definition. Think of it this way. Imagine you've got, you don't have to imagine, I've never seen no grass in England, ever. I don't know, there's not one green blade of grass in the entire country. I literally took a 3-hour train journey. There's nothing, it's dirt and dust. Anyway, so you don't have to imagine it. Imagine you're trying to plow a field at the moment, right? Or no, first, before you try and plow it, you're trying to sow seed into the field. Nothing happens, it just bounces off the rock-hard ground. So what do? You get your plow out and you start plowing. And in order to plow, what is the motion of plowing? It's actually, it's cutting and turning over and exposing and cutting and almost, if you want, leaving a scar in what is otherwise a smooth surface. And so you have to almost leave a wound. You have to almost leave the earth lying there bare and exposed and vulnerable, right? That is what plowing is, I think. I mean, as far as I know. Not a farmer. But without the hard ground going through that kind of ordeal, as it were, or being made to kind of suffer or be left vulnerable and exposed in that way, there's no possibility of fruit, no crops. But once you sow seed into that and water it and all the rest of it, stuff grows, right? So makarios is the plowed field, for it will bear fruit. Do you see? You've got this really flat, hard field, like kind of dirty and dusty over there, like laughing at the plowed field, being like, ha, look, you've been plowed. And it's like, no, you don't understand. I'm makarios. Even though that was really painful, I know that fruit is coming. You, on the other hand, anyway. Or you could say makarios. Makarios is that married couple who haven't held back, have gone to the hard places, have worked through hurt and despair and grown closer and stronger as a result, right? Like you get it, right? So that is a makarios. That's a blessed marriage as opposed to one where you're walking on eggshells the entire time and can't say anything difficult to each other. So that is my definition of makarios and blessed, okay? First definition. Second definition, Peace. There's a lot of war and violence going on in the world at the moment. I mean, it seems like, you sort of update your news app and it's like, ceasefire in Iran. Oh, wait, no, bombs again. Oh, wait, ceasefire. Oh, wait, they've run out of bombs, so they're going to call it a ceasefire. Oh, wait. And it's like, can we see that this is like literally like so antithetical to biblical shalom, peace? It's crazy, right? In Manenberg, I was in a communion service the other night at this thing that Sarah and I were at. And I was sitting at the back, candles, someone was strumming away, some kind of, soft Christian song, and everyone was sort of quietly weeping. It's like, if you're new to this, that's what we do at the end. We'll do it in a minute. And my phone was just lighting up, just buzzing with basically gang fight had erupted in Manenberg again, literally as we were sitting in this chapel. And I was just naming the different guys. Code Blue, this guy's been shot, 8-shell shot, lying in there. Sabi Close, he's been stabbed, don't know what's going on. And I was just like, oh my days, the tension of living in like two different worlds. That's a whole other talk. The point being, they will call peace in Manenberg in a week or two. I can guarantee that, because gang fight is awful for the drugs trade, because it stops where different people are allowed to walk, right? So if you're trying to make loads of money out of selling crystal meth and heroin, you shoot long enough to try and get a little bit more territory, but you don't shoot so long that you lose all your profit. And then the people call that peace. So can we see whether it's a nation state or a gang leader? Like, this isn't real peace. When Jesus says, I give you peace that the world cannot give, it has never felt more real than around about now. And so what is this peace that Jesus gives that the world cannot? Well, simply speaking, shalom, or salam in the Arabic, it signifies wholeness, completeness, health, safety, well-being. In every area of your life, physical, social, mental, spiritual. It's like nothing broken, nothing missing. This sense of wholeness, abundance. This is biblical shalom. And so to try and call peace without any reference to God is a little bit as absurd as trying to make a tree in a factory. It's impossible. You can kind of construct something that looks a bit like it, but it's utterly futile. And so when we think shalom is about everything flourishing as God intended it, this should make us, when we think about makarios, flourishing, when we think about peace, shalom, nothing broken, nothing missing, and when we look at the news, when we think about even maybe our own lives or state of relationships, the things that we're carrying that feel decidedly unpeaceful or unblessed, there is something inbuilt to these definitions that I believe should make us desire and long and ache for a state where no more crying, pain, and death will be around. This should make us look forward to the time where God is making all things new. I know you've heard a lot about that. This church is kind of like the all things new church, isn't it? Right? And peacekeepers, think of a UN peacekeeper. They tend to carry guns, wear bulletproof vests, and kind of see violence as the solution to violence sometimes. I'm being a bit cynical. Peacekeepers are essentially there to enforce a state of security, right? Based loosely on the myth of redemptive violence. So I'm going to kill you in order to show you that killing people is wrong. Essentially. Lots of reductionist definitions here today. But basically, that's what peacekeepers do. And we see that in Manenberg. There's a Muslim vigilante group called Pagad, People Against Gangs and Drugs. And they're a bit of a sinking ship these days. But in the late 90s and early noughties, they would firebomb drug dealers' houses. There was, don't look it up, but there's well-documented instances of them doing all sorts of unmentionable things in the name of purity of religion and through the myth of redemptive violence, because of course we must, anyway, that's a whole other thing. But the point being that peacemakers don't carry guns. Peacemakers carry hope. Peacemakers don't wear bulletproof vests because we're less interested in enforcing security and more interested in cultivating safety. And there's a huge difference between security and safety. Let me explain by way of an example. We see it play out a lot in Cape Town. As you drive from the townships, so we live near the airport. If anyone been to Cape Town? A couple of people. So when you land in the airport, you're flanked by townships on the left and the right, coming in the N2 highway onto town. And we live one junction away from the airport. And as you drive from our community, Manenberg, through the suburbs into town, you begin to see a growing fixation with security. You build high walls, install electric fences, have a couple of large dogs in the yard, panic buttons linked to private armed response companies. That's actually fairly standard. And I'm not necessarily saying it's wrong, because everybody's got a story, and I don't want to judge without, well, I don't want to judge at all. But tell me your story, then I'll know if I should judge. No, I'm joking. But how peaceful, honestly, can it be to be behind all those layers of electrified and brick-based security? Honestly, not very safe. And that's because security is not the same as safety. Security tries to guarantee something it cannot guarantee, but safety comes ultimately how? Through reciprocity, mutuality, community. When Sarah and I moved into Manenberg, people sometimes say, do you carry guns? Do you have this? Of course we don't. Would Jesus carry a gun? Are you kidding me? No. But we committed to not having walls higher than any of our neighbors, not having anything that our neighbors don't have. Because guess what? I stick out like a sore thumb, and I don't want to create more layers of distance between people I'm trying to be a good neighbor towards, not insulate myself from. So you can't make a tree in a factory. Guns don't bring peace, and electric fences don't bring safety. Okay? So far, so simple, right? So I'm getting a little ahead of myself. We're going to look at Acts 16, which is a wonderful passage and kind of hilarious at the same time. If you like a bit of comedy, you'll love this. And the way I'd set this up is this. This is the funny bit. So Acts 2, anyone know what happened in Acts 2? This is an easy gimme just to kind of get you on side and make you feel like your Bible knowledge is good. Acts 2, anyone? Pentecost. Woo. Yeah, right. Interestingly, when the believers spoke in different tongues, what's the one language they didn't speak in? They didn't speak in Latin, because Latin was the language of the Roman Empire, and God doesn't speak the language of empire. Someone told me that. I thought that was good. I thought I'd get more of a kind of, ooh, okay. That wasn't even the main point. All right, fine. That was me going off piece thinking it was worth it. It wasn't. I bring it back. All right. So, Acts 16. This is Paul and Silas. Oh, that's my point. Acts 2, Pentecost. The timeline from Acts 2 to Acts 15 is 20 years. Okay, that got, okay. So we kind of read it in our daily Bible notes with Nicky Gumbel or whatever, and we read that and we're like, okay, that's probably about 2 weeks later. No, it's 20 years later. We get to Acts 15. Acts 15, yes. Acts 15 is the Council of Jerusalem, where they're basically having a kind of emergency meeting to decide whether circumcision is part of the gospel message, right? Things have changed, thank God. And the old school Jews were like, well, of course it is. That shows kind of commitment to God. And the new kind of breed of Gentile believers are like, are you kidding? That had nothing to do with anything Jesus did for us. And so they're having this kind of cultural dissonance, with generational and cultural dissonance. Happens in churches all the time. Sure, not in this one. But what happens at the end of chapter 15 is that the reason Paul and Silas are together in Acts 16 is because Paul and Barnabas, whose nickname, Barnabas, is the son of encouragement, by the way, have a massive falling out. So you've had this council where everyone decides, right, kumbaya, we're all mates now, right, we've got this integrated theology going forward 20 years after Pentecost. So it took a bit of time. And then even the egos of the son of encouragement and Paul, like the super apostle, could not reconcile after this reconciliatory council that they end up parting company. That's the only reason Paul's with Silas in Acts chapter 16. I find that kind of funny, and I also find it incredibly encouraging that like these guys were still dealing with massive hang-ups, insecurities, probably comparison issues, theological nuance differences, ego issues, pride. And yet, look at what God did through them, right? That's encouraging, guys. Okay, let's read it then. So, Acts 16, starting at verse 16. Once, when we were going to the place of prayer, we were met by a female slave who had a spirit by which she predicted the future. She earned a great deal of money from her owners for her owners. That's a big difference. By fortune telling. She followed Paul and the rest of us, shouting, "These men are servants of the Most High God who are telling you the way to be saved." She kept this up for many days. Finally, Paul became so annoyed that he turned around and said to the spirit, not to the woman, to the spirit, "In the name of Jesus, I command you to come out of her." At that moment, the spirit left her. And when her owners realized that their hope of making money was gone, they seized Paul and Silas and dragged them into the marketplace to face the authorities. They brought them before the magistrates and said, "These men are Jews," true, "and are throwing our city into an uproar by advocating customs unlawful for us Romans," false. Interesting, isn't it, how satanic accusation will often have a little bit of truth to it, but then goes off-piste. Okay, we'll stop there for a sec. So, Paul and Silas are going around ministering. Who is it who recognizes often the presence of Jesus first? In the Bible, it's generally three groups of people. It's the demonized, the poor, or women, all of whom society had obviously marginalized. What's the implicit message there? Come to your own conclusion if you want. I heard this joke, actually. Who am I to promote you to arbitrary judicial positions? I'll let you be the judge of that. Oh, that's quite good. Anyway. So they're walking around for many days. The demonic recognizes the presence of Jesus in them and starts shouting, "These men are servants of the Lord." Now the woman does this for days. Why? Why, if Paul could cast the demon out of her the moment he wanted to, why does he take days to do it? My contention, my conviction, my suggestion to you is that it took him a few days to count the cost of what he knew would happen were he to liberate this demonized woman. He knew that he would be falsely accused. He knew what false accusation would bring. He knew that he'd be flogged. He knew that he'd be imprisoned. And he was counting the cost, I believe. Almost like Jesus, "Lord, if there's any other way, take this cup from me, but not my will, yours be done." And I guess over the course of 3 days or whatever, God's like, "No, Paul, there really isn't any other way. I'm writing Acts 16 right now. You don't need, this is what happens." Right? So then what happens? She gets free, he gets imprisoned. We won't go on just too much from there. But the thing is that Paul recognized that God can redeem even our greatest pain so that it becomes our life message. And so I want to say today, if there's anyone here feeling that there's no way God could forgive you for the things you've done, you need to remember that Paul, who wrote a great chunk of the New Testament, and David, who wrote a big old piece of the Old Testament, were both murderers. And one was a kind of super apostle who sparked the early church revival, and the other was a man, he was a rapist as well, David, who was called a man after God's own heart. This is redemption at the deepest, deepest level. So anyone here feeling too bad for God, you need to know that is not a thing, okay? And so, why were they in prison? Based on false accusations. But the reason really was that they had set a demonized woman free. They were attacked by a mob, flogged and beaten and thrown in jail. What happens is that peacemaking will always attract persecution. Peacekeeping is usually on the side of power. Peacemaking is often speaking truth to power, and power doesn't like it, so it comes with persecution. Now, I won't ask anyone to put up their hands if you've been in jail here, but what I will say is that the likelihood is if anyone has, the chances are you weren't doing what Paul and Silas did when they were in prison. Let's read on. Verse 22, the crowd joined in the attack against Paul and Silas, and the magistrates ordered them to be stripped and beaten with rods. After they had been severely flogged, they were thrown in prison, and the jailer was commanded to guard them carefully. When he received these orders, he put them in the inner cell and fastened their feet in stocks. About midnight, Paul and Silas were praying and singing hymns to God, and the other prisoners were listening to them. Suddenly, there was such a violent earthquake that the foundations of the prison were shaken. At once, all the prison doors flew open and everyone's chains came loose. The jailer woke up, and when he saw the prison doors open, he drew his sword and was about to kill himself because he thought the prisoners had escaped. But Paul shouted, "Don't harm yourself, we're all here." So at midnight, they're sitting in chains in like high security prison, singing and worshiping God. Like, do they not realize what has just happened to them? They've been flogged and imprisoned. Why are they singing in worship to God? I'll tell you why, because they had just demonstrated the power of the gospel they preached. They had put the gospel to the test, and it had worked. Remember what I said at the beginning? They were so excited. This thing that we are preaching, it is true, we know that, but it works. How good is that? Praise you, God. These chains literally mean nothing right now. How amazing. They just demonstrated the power of the gospel by liberating an oppressed, demonized woman. She was no longer bound because the power of God had been displayed through their lives. They laid down their lives for the sake of someone the world had exploited. That's what peacemakers do. And suddenly there's an earthquake. The prison's violently shaken, the doors and the chains break. Don't ask me how that works practically. But the jailer's about to kill himself. His first week in the job. Bleak. He just found it on a website. Interview went well, thought, I can do this. Chain him up, yep, come along. And he's like, I can't even do that. And Paul and Silas tell him, don't kill yourself. They don't run away because their heart is primarily for the other rather than themselves. They literally go back into the cell, lock themselves back up and go, we're here. We're all here. They don't say, yeah, you dirtbag, they'll teach you. Because guess what? This wasn't some neutral stranger. This is the guy who's just flogged them. This is the guy who's just beaten them with rods. This is their enemy. And they get back into prison, lock themselves up again, and say to him, if it's between our freedom or your life, we choose your life. They liberated the oppressed, demonized woman by giving up their life and ending up in jail. They then give their life up again the second time and prefer the jailer who's just beaten them senseless to themselves. This is what peacemakers do. The desire for your enemies flourishing? What is that? What kind of power is that? That's holy power. That is utterly other, completely set apart from any category the world might try and put you in. And so in a world of exaggerated promises and clickbait, we need to remember this, that God's power isn't in the numbers, it's not in the show, it's not in that conference disconcertingly promising to set you on fire or something like that. It's in being able to joyfully pay the cost for somebody else. And there's a word for this, Acts 1 verse 8. Jesus said to the disciples, he says, you'll receive power. This power, again, remember, and you'll become some chicken translated it as witness. Not here, some Bible translator. If you're here, no, I get it, you're just quoting. Yeah, that's fine. The Bible translates, what it means, the Greek is martyr. You will receive power, you'll be my martyrs until the ends of the earth. That's Acts 1 verse 8. Swap the numbers round to Acts 8 verse 1. What happens? A great persecution breaks out. The church is scattered and is literally martyred in order for the growth and spread of the gospel, as Jesus said it would be. Integrated into Makarios, blessed, is suffering, persecution. This is what happens. We are martyrs. We are peacemakers. We are witnesses. I want to end by reading you a journal entry from my journal entry from December 2024. Because you need to know that, like, I come here, I preach, I go home next week. Like, most of you don't know me. But I want to be vulnerable. I want to share vulnerably with you the cost that it costs us to have a home for addicted and abused women and their kids and gangsters coming out of drugs and a reintegration house. We've now just bought this tavern that we're going to run as a healing center for the whole community. The cost of that, I just want to share a little bit. Not for, just whatever, just because I think it's important. So I've been reading Psalm 126, and it said this. It says, those who sow in tears will reap in songs of joy. Those who go out weeping, carrying seed to sow, will return with songs of joy, carrying sheaves with them. And I wrote this. This is December 2024. Sowing in tears seems to be pretty much all we do. Weeping over the injustice people live under and trying to help in some way. But then the sheer brokenness of the situation brings dysfunction, accusation, and pain, and many go back to the grinding despair and hopelessness they were in before. After this, we continue, not because we're mad, though some call us that, but because we believe in our deepest parts that this is our life of worship, that Jesus desires all to know and love him, and that as we suffer, we grow perseverance, character, and ultimately hope. It's a costly journey. Mental health, marital stability, and family life need to be protected and nourished. Personal pursuit of God's presence need to happen for its intrinsic worth, not in order to succeed in ministry. Living close to injustice and trauma does something to us. It demands of us that we check our presuppositions, our instinct to judge, our need to be savior, our latent loyalty to our culture of origin. But it also softens us in that we begin to realize that all those issues we had such strong opinions about are much more complex when being outworked in embodied lives. And finally, it sharpens us. We literally cannot afford to coast through life. We have to be spiritually alert and alive. And all of this brings us to songs of joy because we realize that the sheaves, the harvest, is us. Verse 29 of Acts 16 says, the jailer called for lights, rushed in and fell trembling before Paul and Silas. They have not said one word to him, trying to convert him. And he then brought them out and asked, sirs, what must I do to be saved? Long story short, he and his entire household get saved. The gospel's not being preached through words. A couple of vague allusions or references to valleys and mountains and chains in the worship songs they were singing, probably during their time locked up. But not a kind of comprehensive gospel message. Just lives laid down, preferring others at every opportunity. And so I'm going to end with this. Is there anyone here who does not have a theology degree? Put your hand up. Hallelujah. Okay, by way of hands, we're just going to keep going. Anyone here? I've got a theology degree. They're fine. I'm not slagging theology degrees. Anyone? I've got 2. Anyone got 2? Anyone got 3? No. Next question. Does anyone ever feel a little bit awkward about sharing their faith in Jesus with someone else? Yeah, that hand at the back went up quick. I see that. I feel that. Does anyone ever feel a little bit ill-equipped? I don't know what I'm going to say. I'm a bit nervous when yeah. Okay, pretty much all of us the entire time. Great. This is brilliant because listen to this. The demoniac in Mark 5, who Jesus called himself Legion, because there are so many of him and all the legion gets thrown into the pigs. Anyone know that story? Yeah, it's classic. Mark 5, read it. And he is then sent out when he's been healed and delivered as the first apostle. The entire Bible, the first apostle is a man who had a legion of demons. And Jesus says to him, go and tell your people about the mercy God's had on you. Go to the towns of the Decapolis. And he's like, I want to go with you. I don't know how to share my faith. What is this 2 ways to lift it? I've heard of a thing called the Alpha course. No. Jesus is like, you don't need it. You're fine. You don't need it. You're fine. All you need to do is tell the story of how God's had mercy on you. I don't have any theology degree. Shut up. Go. 2 chapters later in Mark 7, Jesus comes back to the area of the Decapolis. And the people who had begged him to leave previously run up to him with the mute and the blind and the sick. This is the area that our friend, the old demoniac, has been sowing seed. Scholars think between 6 and 12 months in between those 2 chapters. On his own, no theology degree, no community, ill-equipped, probably a little bit nervous that people are like, but wait a minute, aren't you the guy who lives in the tomb and, right? And they got there how? End of Mark 4, because Jesus said, I only go where the Father calls me to go, and I only do what he tells me to do. So they get in a boat, they're going to the other side of the lake where the demoniac lived, and they hit a storm in the middle of the Sea of Galilee. Okay, this is actually, you know what? Can we get the band up? Because we're going to end in a little bit, and we're going to do that crying thing, like a jokes, fine. Complain to Zach, it's all right. And they get to the storm, and the disciples are all there. Jesus is asleep below deck on a, travel pillow and just chilling. The disciples are like, are you kidding? Do you not care if we drown? So he kind of yawns, goes up, takes command over the entire cosmos. Peace, be still. And the storm subsides. Some of us in this room, I believe, have a sense that I am doing what I really felt the Lord asked me to do. I am going to that place I really felt him say I should go to. And yet I'm in the middle of a storm. And quite frankly, it doesn't feel like Jesus is even awake. But you need to know that the other side of that storm was a demoniac, was a bleeding woman, was Jairus, the temple leader, and was an entire region that came to know Jesus.